Welcome to State of the State. I'm Darlene and I'm in conversation with Paul Pence. Paul is running for Lieutenant Governor. Welcome.
Oh, thrilled to be here.
Actually, is it okay if I call you Paul?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So I'm going to read your general position statement.
Mm-hmm.
The official role of Rhode Island Lieutenant Governor is very limited. It is not a legislative position, and it's not a policy-making position. There are a few steering committees to sit on, but if all we do is put a career politician in the position to take a 4-year nap before retirement, it's a complete waste of taxpayer dollars.
Okay.
Expand upon that.
So most of us remember Bob Healy, who made the point that he would run for the office and not even show up. He'd return the pay. He would basically do his best to eliminate the position. I'm not Bob Healy. He didn't see any value at all in the position. I see it as a unique position that can be used for bettering the state, for better representing the interests of the people of the state. Mm-hmm. But that's not the way we've treated it. Mm-hmm. So in a way, Bob was right. If we continue to do what Bob saw happening again and again and again with career politicians who are rewarded for being loyal to the party, being put in that position, mm-hmm. or maybe occasionally somebody hoping for a stepping stone or a podium to stand on in order to do his whatever his partisan interests are. It's a complete waste of $1 million a year of taxpayer money. $1 million.
The salary's $1 million?
No.
Oh.
No. The budget's $1 million.
The budget's $1 million.
The budget's $1 million. The salary for lieutenant governor is about the same as a decent manager at a decent sized company would be paid, a little over $100,000.
For lieutenant governor?
Lieutenant governor. Yeah. So it's decent pay for what Bob Healy saw as a hammock for a career politician.
Okay. So you see it as an opportunity.
It is an opportunity.
Okay.
And it's not just an opportunity, it's a unique opportunity.
Why so?
Because it has access to every door in the State House. The Lieutenant Governor can knock on a door and say, "Hi, I'm Lieutenant Governor. Let me talk to you."
About what though?
That's the
and
next
do
question.
What?
That's the next question.
Okay.
I'm an engineer. I fix things.
Actually, can I ask you this? Before
Yes.
we go into your background, what door would you knock on first?
The first door is actually not the most important door. Okay. The first door would actually be emergency management. And that is one of the statutory responsibilities of the Office of Lieutenant Governor, is to oversee emergency management through the Emergency Management Committee. And if the Lieutenant Governor takes over for the governor, it very well could happen during an emergency. So that needs to be whipped into shape first. Now, we saw with COVID that they dusted off the plans for what happens if Ebola strikes, and then we went and shut down the whole state, and continue to follow that game plan, only letting Walmart effectively be open. Concentrating more people.
And don't forget, liquor stores were open.
Well, that too. Concentrating more people into a smaller area, shortening business hours, when in fact it would have worked a whole lot better if we had opened up businesses wide, encouraged them to expand their business hours so people weren't packed together. We have emergencies that we know eventually we're going to get hit by a hurricane. We know eventually there's going to be another blizzard of 78. And we should know that there's going to be disasters of any kind, major power grid disruptions, complete failure of our computer systems, all sorts of things. And so if you ask me, the first door I would knock on, it's an area that I would be responsible for, an area that's important, and that is emergency management. I would want on my first day to have them give me a list of every single emergency plan they have, when it was last reviewed, and whether or not it's properly resourced. We need to be prepared for problems. There are 25 committees Lieutenant Governor either sits on or assigns people to, so he does have a range of influence. So no, he doesn't set policy. He doesn't pass legislation. But he does have responsibilities, and those responsibilities will demonstrate that it's possible to fix things. So, Small Business Advisory Council, very important in this state. Small business is the business of Rhode Island. Small business is just about the only business in Rhode Island these days. if we don't take care of our small businesses, we'll have fewer and fewer small businesses, fewer and fewer jobs, more and more poverty. We will all be struggling harder and harder and harder just to put food on the table. We need to nurture our small businesses. We need to encourage our entrepreneurs. Those are the kinds of things, the things on that list that you'd go to and establish the ability to say, look, we have fixed a problem. That then opens up the potential to go knock on another door that's not in that circle and say, look what I did for the Small Business Advisory Council. Let me help you. Second one, outside that circle, I think it would be the registry. Not because it's the most important thing, but because it's so visible.
What do you mean the registry?
The motor vehicle registry.
Oh, okay, okay.
The motor vehicle registry. Everybody interacts with it. Everybody hates it. Everybody sees how dysfunctional it is.
Why do you think the system is so dysfunctional? And which dysfunction are you speaking to particularly?
Okay. Incredibly bad customer service. The inability to...
So that's the person in the job?
It is not just the person in the job, it's the systems surrounding that person, the systems that give that person in the job the ability to do their job. Yeah. The level of staffing, the assignment of that staffing, the goals that the staff are given, the expectations, all those things help create the environment. If you go to a restaurant and you get bad service, it isn't necessarily the waitress. It's the manager. The manager usually is not nice to their staff, doesn't set proper expectations, doesn't coach their staff. In every complex process, there are steps that should be eliminated. They don't add value. Eliminate the non-value added steps. Streamline processes. Eliminate barriers to getting the job done. That will reduce the need for all the people in the back room. We can move them to the front room, up to the retail space, and then let them serve the customers with the proper coaching, with the proper training. And then when people go to the registry, they won't plan on spending the entire day at the registry. We should look for alternative ideas. In Texas, you go to the registry, you don't go to the registry, you go to the local supermarket, and they can register your car. Wow. Not too long ago here in Rhode Island, you could go to the town hall and register your car.
What happened with that? Like, why did they do away with that?
As Rhode Island sought more and more tax revenue. They started to see the registration fees and the other fees associated with motor vehicle ownership as a serious revenue source. And they didn't want to have the risk of that revenue not being handled in a way the state approved. So they pulled that in.
So not trusting the towns?
Not necessarily not trusting the town, but definitely wanting better and better control over the process. But maybe not trusting the town. I wasn't here when that happened, and I definitely wasn't that person who made that decision.
Okay, so before we move on, what do you have to say about the car tax?
Okay, so
actually, vehicles?
Before we move to that, please let me finish this one thought.
Oh, okay, I thought we finished.
After you take care of the highly visible thing, then you go to the really important one, DCYF.
Oh, I definitely want to get to DCYF. I want to get to that.
So I won't go into detail. We'll save that for later then.
But because we're specifically talking about automobiles and whatnot, I know you have a position on car tax.
Yeah.
So share that.
Car tax is finally gone. I hope. I hope it stays gone. Car tax is a misunderstood tax. It's levied by the towns, not by the state, but the state set the regulations associated with it. It is taxed a little bit differently in each town, and oddly enough, the car tax is highest in Providence, or in this case was highest in Providence. For decades, we've been arguing to get rid of the car tax. The political solution is let's replace the car tax with a chunk of income tax or sales tax. And therefore, with the huge amount of car taxes that used to be collected in Providence, That's being paid by all people, whether they have a car or not. Paid for people in towns where the car tax was much, much lower. So it was the way politicians handle problems. There is a similar tax that applies to businesses called the tangible property tax. It's also levied by the towns. It's a tremendous aggravation to small businesses.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
I can.
Yep.
Yes, I speak from personal experience.
If you own a desk, you pay a tax on that desk over and over and over.
What happens if you buy the desks at a yard sale? Or it's a
still
hand-me-down desk?
You still have to pay
Or the desk was there when you moved into the office.
the new value of the desk again and again and again. The towns expect that money. They set their budget according to that money. And if we solve that problem the same way we solved the car tax, then okay, we just eliminate it and we'd pay it with income tax.
Well,
it's the wrong way of doing it.
Going back to the desk.
Yes.
Let's say I pick up a desk at a yard sale. Someone else has paid sales tax on this desk.
Yep.
Now, I have to pay property tax for a hand-me-down desk?
Depending on your town, that's the way they worked it out.
Okay, so you're going to help small business owners with that.
That is one of the easiest things to point at. That is a major source of aggravation for small business owners. We are not going to...
Or their accountants.
And their accountants. We're not going to eliminate the ability of the towns to meet their budgets. If we waved a magic wand and got rid of that, that would definitely cause problems for the towns. But we can reduce the aggravation, and that at least is a step forward. Okay. We are unfriendly to small business. It's not just that we are hostile to small business, we're unpleasant to small business. Okay. And this is one example. Okay. The way to eliminate a tax like this is different. You provide each town a one-time eliminate this tax, and you can adjust the property tax on businesses one time to equal that revenue. Give them that ability, they do it, they can never go back to having that tax again. When 80% or 95% or whatever magic number the politicians come up with is reached, then the last few towns, sorry, you're going to have to do it. You've got 3 years. That's how to eliminate something like this, not by taxing everybody on their income tax to make up for this. Now, it's not necessarily going to reduce the burden on you because you have to pay real estate taxes. It'll move it off of the aggravation level to a single tax that you pay and reduce your overhead, administrative overhead.
Well, but will that ultimately save a small business owner money?
Absolutely.
If you're reducing your administrative time. Okay, well, let's move on because there's so much to talk about.
But that's the way to have eliminated the car tax. We should have done the same thing that way.
Okay. How did you get here, Paul? Tell us a little bit about just your background.
Okay.
And what you do now.
Okay. Yeah. I'm an Army brat. I was raised on military bases. As an Army brat, I had home was wherever my stuff was. I didn't have the sense of place that Rhode Islanders have.
You're getting emotional.
Very likely to. You noticed it very quickly there.
I did. Yeah. That's my job.
Yes.
Yeah. Why the big emotion?
Because there's one thing that Army brats want more than anything else, and that's home. And Rhode Island gave that to me. Oh, I came here to interview for Cherry Semiconductor, another decent-sized manufacturer, 2,000 people who effectively isn't here anymore. They've got a tiny presence left. And on interview day, I went out to see what the neighborhoods were like, and I saw two ladies standing by a mailbox drinking coffee. That's where I wanted to live.
Why?
Why? It's just magical.
The conversation.
Sure. You're going to have a lieutenant governor who cheers up easily. But there's certain things that get me, and that's talking about the military and the police do that to me. Talking about home and family does that to me. And so I wanted Rhode Island to be my home. And I got the job, I moved here. I was an engineer working in what's called process engineering. There's somebody who, in a manufacturing process, when something breaks, they call and say, what's wrong? I'm not the guy with a wrench. I'm the guy who says, call the guy with a wrench, or retrain that person, or rewrite that procedure, or we need different raw materials. I took that skill set about 30 years ago and translated it to making businesses run better. So a business has problems, their purchasing is too slow, or they've got too much turnaround in their employee base. So they hire somebody like me. Now, I work for one company continuously. I'm effectively an internal consultant. Now, people who are familiar with the terminology, I'm the ISO 9000 guy or the TQM guy, or I'm sort of a cross between an engineer and an efficiency expert. So that's the skill set that I brought to work for Cherry Semiconductor. Okay. They had grown from 200 people to 2,000 people. Now, if 200 people, really smart people can work really hard and get the job done. With 2,000 people, that doesn't work anymore. So they needed somebody like me to figure out how to make their business work. So I brought in systems for making sure that instructions were available to the technicians, that they were properly trained, that we had audits and inspections and all the things necessary to make a good quality management system. Now, I'm not the guy who inspects stuff, I'm the guy who makes sure we got somebody to inspect stuff. Okay, so using the word quality often confuses people. Okay. Well, Cherry Semiconductor got bought by Semiconductor. I found myself out in the real world and spent a little while working for the Westerly Sun as a reporter.
Oh, wow, okay.
As a Westerly Sun as a reporter, I got to attend a financial town meeting in Richmond. And that was yet another
enlightening?
It was another transcendental moment. I thought that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I signed up to vote. I would go to jury duty if I was called. I encouraged the local softball teams and all the stuff a good citizen should be doing, but I hadn't run for office. And I complained constantly up to that point. And one thing my dad would say, he wasn't really good on advice, but he was good at pointing things out. Are you going to complain about it or are you going to do something about it? So I decided then that I was going to do something about it. I started investigating the political process here in Rhode Island, and that led me to believe that the best use of my skill set is being a coach, a facilitator, somebody who can get excellence from other people. And there's only one job in the entire state government that does that. And that's a job where I can knock on a door, say, hi, you got a problem. Here's why it's a problem. Let me help you. Okay. So that's what got me here.
All right, so we are about the 13, 14 minute mark, so I just want to pace accordingly. You mentioned knocking on the door of DCYF.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Okay. You're not going to make any changes without demonstrating success up front. That's why, as much as I want to address the problems that DCYF has experienced in the past.
Name 3 problems that you see at DCYF.
Okay. Problem is we don't have nearly enough social workers. We've gone from 600 down to 300 social workers, and that was before COVID. Okay. So the second problem that I see is...
And how many are actually licensed social workers? Are you talking about licensed social workers?
I do not know. Right. So are we easily investigated, but there are social workers. We turn out social workers. We pay them pitifully.
Pitifully?
Pitifully. Oh, are you echoing that or are you agreeing?
I'm agreeing.
Oh, yeah, good.
But remember that insurance companies are dictating how much money organizations and healthcare professionals are going to get.
Right.
So DCYF in some way is limited.
Absolutely. So, getting them the finances, getting them the encouragement, getting them the support, changing the regulations where necessary to make things happen.
Okay, so one of the problems is staffing.
Staffing is
salaries.
The first one. The third one is actually what I consider the true problem, and that is the metrics.
What do you mean?
Okay, you measure success and you get what you measure. success for a social worker is not necessarily what's best for the child, what's best for the families. It is the metric that their boss sets.
I'm not following.
Social workers are measured by their bosses on whether or not they turn in their reports. How many reports did you write this week?
I don't know. I don't know if that's the case.
Deep down inside, they care.
Well,
but their boss is not measuring them on that.
Well, I don't know if it's that. I'm not exactly sure. From my experience working in community mental health, they want you to see as many clients as possible during the day.
Yes.
They could book me with 10, which is not good self-care, not good care for a client.
Yep.
The insurance companies are then dictating how much money
Right.
they're going to get. The agency is going to get reimbursed for the service, and then how much of that goes down to the therapist.
Yes.
Right. So how do we even begin to work in that system? So for somebody to keep their job, they have to hit the number.
Yep.
There's a target of X number of clients you have to see a week to keep your job and to be productive.
That's right.
Now, you can't force anyone into mental health care.
Right.
Now, at DCYF, though, there's probably a lot of court-ordered cases, so there's probably a lot of families being forced into treatment. Many families do go asking for help,
Yes.
voluntarily too. So how does a case manager and a social worker tend to a caseload that is too much?
Okay, and that's what I was saying about you have to make the numbers, and the numbers for you, you mentioned like 3 or 4 times here, the caseload, the numbers, the 10, that is the metric that says whether or not you keep your job. Not whether or not you're good at your job, it's whether or not you visit 10 places and write 10 reports. The metric is wrong. The metric may be the only metric available for them, but that is not the metric that's best for the children, not best for the families. The metric for the bosses.
Not best for the worker, not best for the
Oh,
therapist.
that too. We burn them out. It's terrible. I've got social workers in my family. And my wife's a CASA volunteer. So while she can't tell me details, I see the effect it has on her to see what happens with the system.
Yeah.
The top bosses, their primary metric is whether or not they get their the child back with their original birth family within 1 year.
Well, is that the standard? Are you sure that's the standard?
Well, if I'm corrected, I'll admit defeat on that.
I don't know what the standard
that was
is. But
my very best understanding of the standard from the people that work within it in my family. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an important metric because it does trigger federal funds coming into the system. But is that the best metric for grooming really good social workers, or hiring them, or nurturing them into to doing what's best for the families?
Yeah, and what's best for a family might not be reunification in a year.
Right.
It might be something very different.
And not only that, but reunification in a year is just as good as reunification in 3 months. It's the same metric. You're rewarded exactly the same for putting it off a year.
Yeah.
So the metric is flawed.
Yeah.
And setting good metrics that are what people really need in that system, or in fact in any system that you want to improve, is what will get you improved.
Well, let's talk about our mental health care system in Rhode Island. I want to save time for your position on the Second Amendment too.
Okay.
So we're talking about children with mental health issues.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Rhode Island is the only state in the country that does not have its own psychiatric facility, correct?
State-owned psychiatric facility.
Correct.
We contract out.
Yeah. How many millions of dollars has that cost taxpayers because they were billing incorrectly to try to bring in funds?
I'm sure you're aware of it. I am not,
Okay.
but it would not surprise me one bit, no matter what number you tell me, because that's how systems like that work.
Yeah. So is there a door that you can knock on to build a hospital? Because there is land and there is talk about that.
There's not just land. there are facilities. You know, Zambrano has only, you know, have you been out that way?
9 ages, yeah.
Oh, okay, but you know it's actually many buildings out there, and very little of that facility is running right now.
Yeah.
You know, so now I don't want to pick up every child in a troubled home and move them all the way off to Zambrano, but we need to consider
Or
options.
adults.
Or adults.
So right
Yeah.
now, if a judge or a jury decides that someone is not safe to live in the community, you know, they are, I guess, criminally insane, they go to Eleanor Slater because they're not safe to go to prison and they're not safe to go into the community. You know, and is that the best care for them? And is that the best care for the community too?
Yeah. Yeah. So many
Eleanor
of these things.
So what's going on at Eleanor Slater, how much money that's cost.
Oh, more knowledgeable on that topic
Yeah.
than I am.
Yeah.
For me to have a good discussion on this, I'd have to research it. But
Okay.
again, doesn't matter what the name is. That's how systems like that work.
Yeah.
I expect problems like that.
Okay.
It's kind of problems that might be fixed by having a state-owned facility, or maybe we would aggravate it because we don't address the problems properly.
Okay.
So it needs to be approached right. Now,
We have 3 minutes.
oh, 3?
So, yeah, so do you want to just touch
Maybe we do
on-
part 1 and part 2.
Yeah, you
okay,
have to
so
come back.
what do you want to jump
Second
to?
Amendment.
Second Amendment. Okay.
Gun control.
Okay, gun control I've got listed there because there are so many people in Rhode Island who see that as a divisive issue. Lieutenant Governor really has no bearing on that whatsoever. However, people are interested in the measure of the man. Okay. I see the Second Amendment as not only giving the promising, establishing that the state will support our right to gun ownership. It also sets the responsibility to individuals to be prepared to protect themselves, their family, and if necessary, their nation. I'm not a gun nut. I am a gun owner. I don't practice nearly enough, but I do know that the firearms in my house are going to protect me an awful lot faster than if I wait for the police to show up. I believe in individual responsibility and accountability, which means that that means I just don't go crazy, but it also means that I don't rely on other people to protect me if I can protect myself. Okay, so gun control, we tend to have political reactions to problems rather than real
Responses rather than responses.
rather than responses. And those political responses are there because of emotional appeal rather than logic. So we need to really take time, discuss what kind of society we want to have, and make those decisions that way, and not just automatically ban any gun as long as it's black, or let's ban any firearm that has a number of bullets greater than, let's see, 10. You know, so those are emotional things rather than true thought-out policies based on the kind of culture we want to be.
All right, so we have a minute. You want to talk into the camera and talk to our audience? You got a few seconds before I sign off.
A few seconds. Okay, so I am in a primary.
Right there.
Oh, over there. I am in a primary. That means that the audience will have an opportunity to decide whether or not I'm the kind of guy they want fixing problems in the state of Rhode Island, rather than just, as many politicians, sleeping in a hammock for 4 years and maybe even get surprised when the governor who was elected decides to move on to other things. So I appreciate the time, and you know, any questions? My website, www.changeagent.us.
All right, well, if you make it right, then you'll come back before the election.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching State of the State. I'm Darlene DeRezzo. Look for us on social media. Our new Instagram account is State of the State RI.